I'm ready to get it on and talk to you guys about the Last Dance wrapped up tonight. I'm a bit sad. I gotta be honest. I mean, it's I'm gonna miss it. I told you guys a few weeks ago I had been sent all 10 episodes 3 or 4 weeks ago. I think it was after the first two. It was after the first two. And obviously the person gave them to me thinking I'd want to watch them, which I did. But I said, you know what? I'm enjoying these Sunday nights. I'm enjoying the suspense of it all. And we don't have any live sports to look forward to. And so I'm really looking forward to these Last Dance episodes like it's the NBA Finals or something. So I didn't watch anything before each Sunday because I just wanted to enjoy it like everybody else. And I'm glad I made that decision because I would have watched it all in one day or maybe 2 days at the most. And I would not have had these last several weeks to just, let the drama build up. So I'm going to miss it. I will probably go back and watch all 10 again soon. But it was tremendous. Overall, very well done. There has been some criticism, and I think it was good criticism. Ken Burns, the incredible documentarian, he said this is not journalism because the subject of the documentary, the main subject, Michael Jordan, has final say. And that's true. Jordan, if anything he didn't want in there, he could have kept out. And so there is truth to that in that it wasn't as much journalism as it was probably entertainment. But you know what? It was darn entertaining. And I loved it. And if it took that to get MJ to buy in and give his time, obviously he gave great time to this in the interviews. And he was open as we've ever seen him, certainly since his retirement. I think it was well worth it. And someone else can go ahead and do an unauthorized documentary of Michael Jordan and the Bulls if they so choose. But I thought this was great. And it was just an overwhelming success. And so props to ESPN and the people that put it together. Jason Hare, the producer. It was really good. It was really good. I'm going to miss it. Quickly, these last two episodes clearly were more basketball driven than any of the previous 8. And some people wanted that. Kerry Kittles, who played against Jordan, we saw him in episode 7 with the Nets. He had told me on my radio show, The Odd Couple, that he wanted more of this. He wanted more of the basketball where you could see what made Jordan tick on the court as opposed to just off of it. I felt the opposite in that I loved the backstories and all that they were given. But tonight, obviously, it was more basketball than anything. And it was good. It was very well done. Obviously, right off the bat, the trash talk is one of the first things that jumps out at you when Reggie Miller says that Jordan told him, don't ever talk trash to Black Jesus. And so from that day on, Reggie Miller never called him Michael Jordan again. He called him Black Jesus or that black cat or whatever. And it's interesting, Reggie saying, we all knew this. I mean, everybody knew Jordan was a great trash talker. And one of the things that Reggie Miller said, he himself, known as one of the greatest trash talkers in NBA history, said that Jordan was also in his class as far as talking trash. And then Brian Russell, let this be a lesson to you young folks out there. If you're going to talk trash, you better be able to back it up, period. And I guess we could say Reggie Miller could have been in that boat as well as a youngster. But for Brian Russell to talk that type of trash, now maybe he was just joking, but Jordan didn't really take it that way. And then for it to end the way it did for Brian, and Jordan hitting 2 game winners in his grill, That's tough. That's tough. Um, so be careful what you say, young people, because it can come back to haunt you. that's that's the first thing that struck out at me. But let me get to my points, my takeaways. Now that I've had a little fun, and Brian was a very good defender, and he shouldn't have talked trash, but he was a very good defender. The first thing that hit me as I was watching, as they talked about the series with the Pacers, and Jordan talked about in 1998, and Jordan talked about how tough it was, and it was probably his toughest. He said it was his toughest series outside of when they used to play Detroit before he won championships. And what hit me at that moment was, man, the game was during the Jordan era, almost exclusively the Jordan era. The game was so physical. I mean, he had to go through this era that very few players, like before that, in the 80s with Bird and Magic. Now, there were obviously some physical plays with the Kevin McHale and the clothesline of Kurt Rambis. And, you know, there was Dr. J and Larry Bird getting into a fight. But the game still was more offense. It was very high scoring in the 80s, very much up and down, not the type of physical defense overall. Obviously, in some individual instances, as I just said. But overall, the 90s was the most physical era of basketball we've ever seen, and that was the Jordan era. And that's what he had to go through. I've already said he had to go through the greatest era of big men that we've ever seen. There was Shaq, a young Shaq, but Shaq was in the league for, you know, Jordan's first 5-6 years. You know, there was Hakeem Olajuwon, David Robinson, Alonzo Mourning. You know, I mean, there were big men, Patrick Ewing. It was the greatest era of centers we ever saw. And then it was the most physical era, period, especially with power forwards. So Jordan, who was a notorious driver to the basket, you could see that whenever he went to the hole, it was just, I mean, people were ready to hammer him. And I looked at it and I said, you know what? He had Detroit to go through, who kind of ushered in that era of physical play in the late 80s. And then he had the Knicks to go through, who, I mean, my goodness, Anthony Mason, Xavier McDaniel, Charles Oakley, Patrick Ewing. It was incredible. Charles Smith, the physicality in those series that Jordan had to go through. And then top it off with the Indiana Pacers. And you look at the scores of some of these games. Some of these finals games that Jordan played, 70, they're in the 70s. I remember that's when I first started covering the league. I covered the Cleveland Cavaliers under Mike Fratello, who were one of the slowest teams in the league, if not the slowest. And I regularly saw games in the 60s and 70s. Jordan's averaging 30 in games that end in the 70s and the 80s. You know, and that last series, 98, he averaged 45 he scored 45 in game 6. And the Bulls as a team scored 87. He scored more than half, well over half the points, or over half the points. So that physical play. And look, I don't wish that we go back to that. I mean, it was what it was. Jordan was beautiful to watch. I prefer the game more free-flowing and wide open as it is today. Maybe you can find a balance, you know, but that was an extreme. And but that's what Jordan had to go through. And the league was always looking for ways to up the scoring, get the game to be more free-flowing, less physical. That's why they put in the zone defense, the kind of truncated zone. You can't play a full zone, but you know, you got a zone defense that you could play. That's why they got rid of hand checking. That's why for 3 seasons, the 3-point line was shorter. They were looking for ways to increase scoring because it was so low. And in the midst of all that physicality, low scoring, Jordan still averages 30. And it was incredible. But that was the first takeaway when I was looking back at that Indiana series. Man, it was so tough and brutal in his era. Almost, when he's done, you start kind of coming out of that physical play. But that's what he had to go through. The second thing is that, and this is based off of I guess we can't call it the flu game anymore, but the food poisoning game. The first thing is, how did it come to be known as the flu game? Obviously, it was reported as such, but I don't know why. I wonder why. Again, obviously, some sources within the Bulls, I guess, told reporters it was a flu that Jordan had, when in fact it was food poisoning. But of course, the first thing that comes to mind is Kobe Bryant in Sacramento. I can't remember the year, but ordering room service and coming up with food poisoning. And it seemed like it was probably the same thing in Utah, that somebody messed around with MJ's pizza. But obviously he overcame that. And what a performance that was for him to put on with food poisoning. Obviously, you could see how exhausted he was and just the terrible shape that he was in. But what that gave me the second takeaway, all of the GOATs, and I'm thinking of the three that I would say are most definitive: Muhammad Ali in boxing, Tom Brady in football as a quarterback, and Michael Jordan in basketball. They all have or had this insatiable desire and will to win. That is what separates them. That is it. In every case, it wasn't just the physicality. The physicality was great, the physical gifts, but that's not what separated them. With Muhammad Ali, yes, he was quick, obviously incredibly fast for a heavyweight, nimble, quick on his feet with the dancing and all that. However, he was facing constantly bigger, stronger men who threw harder punches. And yet his will to win enabled him to overcome. In several of the fights, whether it was Sonny Liston, Joe Frazier, but most significantly, I believe, was George Foreman. I mean, George Foreman was bigger than Ali, hit much harder than Ali, destroyed Joe Frazier, who had beaten Ali when he fought Foreman, and yet Ali had this incredible will to win. He probably took the best punch in the history of boxing. But that goes to your will to win. And then with Tom Brady, he's got 13 game-winning drives in the playoffs. It's not his physical ability that makes him the GOAT. He doesn't have the strongest arm. He's obviously not fast, not athletic, relatively speaking. Doesn't move that well. It's his will to win, his competitiveness. He's got 13 game-winning drives in the playoffs. The second most is John Elway with 6 in the playoffs, and then Joe Montana with 5. Tom Brady has more than both of those guys combined. He's got 6 game-winning drives alone in the Super Bowl. And they only got 6, or Elway, in the playoffs total. Montana doesn't even have that. So that's another example, the will to win. For all you young athletes coming up, you want to play pro or college or whatever, work on your mind as much as you work on your body and your physical tools. Obviously, you need that. But the mental strength, the will to win, the competitiveness, to fight through adversity, that is what will separate you and take you to the next level. And finally, of course, we saw it in Michael Jordan. I mean, again, the ability to play through the physical play that the opponents were throwing at him. And then to overcome that food poisoning in the way he did. It would have been easy for someone to feel like, man, I've already won 4. You know, I mean, if I lose this one, or if maybe I sit this game out and get ready for the next one, it would have been easy for somebody to say that they're not going to kill me. Nobody's won every single finals they were in. You know, I can just, if I lose this one, so be it. I mean, I'm set. I'm already known as the greatest player of all time. No, he wasn't satisfied. It was like those never happened. He had to win that game 5, let alone the series. He was focused just on game 5. And so that is what every single GOAT that's definitively the GOAT had. And Jordan was obviously in that class and no different. The third takeaway is that as much as Michael Jordan is the GOAT, as great as he was, we saw several instances where he was human. They didn't try to highlight it, but knowing the history myself and just seeing it again and it bringing back some thoughts and then looking at a little research, we saw Mike was human. And I'm saying the takeaway flashpoint is this. It's tough on today's athletes. Most notably, the one that's compared to Jordan, and that's LeBron. They are overly scrutinized by me and others. The debate shows every day, the radio talk every day, 24/7. We scrutinize every possession. It's almost like it's not enough to win, just win. You have to darn near be perfect in winning. And that's how we scrutinize today's players. And Jordan himself, again, as much as he's the GOAT, would not have been able to stand up to that scrutiny. We saw him miss free throws. I'm looking at Utah game 5. He missed free throws. At the end of game 4, when David Aldridge said Stockton made the best pass he's ever seen by a point guard. I love DA. It was a great pass, but I wouldn't go that far. The best ever I've seen from a point guard, but it was a great pass. But Jordan missed that jumper. And then Stockton gets the rebound, one dribble, and makes the great pass. He would have gotten ripped today on every channel, on every show. You know, we saw Rick Smits block his shot. Now, granted, Rick Smits was 7 feet tall and a very good player, actually. Not a Hall of Famer, but a really good player. But he blocked Jordan's shot. That would have been, some criticism. That's the Indiana series, obviously. Reggie Miller hits the 3 in the 98 series to win game 4 and tie the series at 2-2. Gives Jordan a little shove as he's coming around. We would have ripped Jordan. You got to be stronger than that. How do you lose your man? You let Reggie Miller's, as thin as a beanpole. How do you let him shove you off like that? And then when Michael finally got there, he didn't even go all the way, extend the block. He just ran over there. He would have gotten criticized beyond belief. And then game 7 against Indiana in the Eastern Conference Final. Y'all know I keeps it real. I love Jordan. Obviously, I always say he's the GOAT, but I keeps it real. I don't carry nobody's water, and I don't rip people unjustly. I keep it real. And in that game, 7, Bulls won 88-83. Michael Jordan in the fourth quarter was 2 for 7. He had 5 of 7 free throws he made, but he was 2 of 7 from the floor. And when the game was tied, he tied the game at 79 with 2 free throws. And then he had a chance. They were up 81-79, and he missed 2 free throws. And Scottie Pippen led him down the stretch with four points. Jordan had 2 free throws in the last 5 minutes. And Ryan Harper hit a free throw and Luke Longley hit a bucket. You know, that was it. Jordan wasn't heroic in those last few moments. But today we act like LeBron, Steph, Kevin Durant, whoever it is. You got to be heroic. You got to hit every shot. You got to take every shot. You got to make every shot. And I don't care if you won. I don't care if you had 12 in the fourth quarter. What'd you do in the last 2 minutes? That's how we act. It's wrong. These dudes are under some scrutiny that's ridiculous. And Michael Jordan, even the greatest of all time, could not have stood up to this scrutiny. He didn't do it by himself, as great as he was. He had help. And so that was my third takeaway. These guys are overly scrutinized. I say it all the time. You know, when LeBron gets criticized for passing the ball off. I mean, Jordan passed it off. Well, he didn't even pass it off to Paxson. When Paxson hit the game-winning shot earlier in the first three-peat. Then Steve Kerr. You know, Jordan gets doubled, gives it to Kerr. Kerr hits the game-winning shot, and I'm fine with that. But let's understand if another player, like Jordan didn't take every last shot. Didn't take every game-winning shot. He understood it's a team game. I care about us winning. And he clearly was happy when they won, regardless of who scored more down the stretch. So that's my third takeaway. And then finally, at the end of the episode 9, I took this away. We finally, after, 9 episodes deep, 9 hours deep, we finally saw a softer side of MJ. We finally saw a softer MJ. Even with his dad, as much as his dad meant to him, and obviously, you know, they had a great relationship. But Jordan didn't come off as, and I don't mean soft in a weak way, but just you didn't see that soft side of him even in his relationship with his dad. You saw, I want to please my dad. You know, when we were, you know, my dad's playing with my brother Larry and they're fixing something in the car and I bring him his dad told the story, but Jordan brings the wrong screwdriver and dad says, get in the house. He wanted to please his dad. He was glad to be in the presence of his father and hang out with his father when they were adults, both of them adults. But you didn't see that softer side of it. Obviously, he was hurt, you know, by the death and everything like that. But even in that, they didn't show, or you didn't see the softer side. But in his relationship with the security guard, Gus Lett, that's where you saw it. It was nice to see that, you know, when his wife, Gus Lett's wife, told that story, that sometimes Michael Jordan would call Gus at 2 a.m. in the morning, crying, And Gus would go over there and they talk obviously about his dad. And when he said this guy became his father figure, that was touching. And that was really that was great to see. I won't even put it in these terms. We saw Jordan was human, because we saw that in some of the flaws that he had, with the gambling and, the things like that. So and even the punching out, Steve Kerr and Will Purdue and all that. So we saw the humanity of him. But we saw that soft side of him that we all have. And that was good to see, because obviously he's come off, and he is and was this ultra alpha male, very demanding, a rock, somewhat, emotionless almost sometimes, and all about the bottom line. And this was good to see that side of him. And, this is obviously nowadays, we know men push it, but some men still don't get it. It's all right to cry. It's all right to cry. And you saw Michael Jordan, and that was touching, that you saw that side of him. I like that. We got to see that. And then, and even with the poem at the end of the whole show, when he wrote the poem, I wish we could have heard the poem. He may not even remember it. Obviously, they burned it up at the end of the 98 season, but that shows as well that he was just driven to win, and that was how he had to do it to win. He had to be all in. He had to be, hardcore and have this rough exterior to win for him. But you saw there were other sides of it. And the poem he shared with his team at the end showed that as well. Another thing, and it came out last week after episodes 7 and 8, there was a report that Scottie Pippen was upset with the way he was portrayed in The Last Dance. And that's why my next takeaway is poor Scottie. Poor Scottie, because obviously Scottie Pippen was a tremendous player, and he has nothing to be ashamed of. And I don't think that The Last Dance went out of its way to make Scottie look bad. In fact, Steve Kerr said we all love Scottie. He was great. He was almost like the anti-Mike. Mike was so hard on him. Scottie was nice to him, and they loved him. They didn't go out of their way to make Scottie look bad, but everything they presented, it happened. It happened. I mean, Scottie was upset about his contract and did wait to have surgery right before the 98 season, 97, 98 season, because he was upset about it. He did sign that long 7-year, I think it was $18 million contract. And I get it. I think that was good that he did it for his family, but maybe just a little shorter deal. Might have been more, would have been wiser. But he did that. Scottie did get the migraine in Game 7 against Detroit. I mean, they're not trying to make him look bad. It happened. And Mike was actually not, they say he gave a look, kind of, when he said it, but he didn't rip Scottie. It was what it was, And then Scottie, he did stay on the bench against the Knicks in the playoffs because the play wasn't called for him. It was called for Tony Kukoc. That happened. He quit on his team. He did quit on his team in that moment. And thankfully, they were able to come back from it, even though they didn't win the series. But that happened. And then the back injury. In Game 6 against the Jazz, Scottie hit a couple of nice shots in that. Give him credit for going out there and gutting through it. But it came off as another, it makes you wonder, did stress get to Scottie? The migraine hit him in Game 7 against Detroit. you know, I don't think sitting out when Kukoc got the play called for him was stress related, but it was a stressful situation. And then this with the back. Now he said he got hit, and he did, but he'd been hit before. Did that? You know, you wonder. Just makes you wonder. And that's why I said poor Scottie. Scottie was built to be a number 2. That's why he was the number 2 and Jordan was the number 1. And it just seemed like in a lot of situations, something came up where Scottie wasn't able to be at his best. So that poor Scottie, that was my thought. Because he may be, hopefully he's not, but he may really be bothered by the portrayal. Doesn't take away from his greatness. His legacy is pure. His legacy is set. But poor Scottie. That's what I thought. The next thing was, man, the mid-range jumper is the game-winning shot, the buzzer-beating shot. It's the kill shot. And it is sad that in today's NBA, by many people, it is viewed as the worst shot in basketball. That mid-range shot, either get in the paint, get to the rim, or shoot a 3. No, and I know it was a different era where they didn't focus on the 3s as much. But even today, whether it's Kevin Durant, whether it's Kawhi Leonard, and obviously guys hit 3s to win games too, but that mid-range shot, you saw it with Jordan both times when he hit game winners in the finals over Brian Russell. It was a mid-range J. The pass to Steve Kerr, a mid-range jump shot. The mid-range J, if you want to consistently win games at the end, if you want to consistently hit buzzer beaters, master the mid-range. Because the defender that can't know what you're doing. Because if you're driving, he may think, he doesn't know if you're going all the way to the rim. Because when you master the mid-range, you can be going full speed or close to it and stop on a dime and pull up and hit that shot. It's the best shot for game winners. Because if you go all the way to the rim, you're obviously going to get contested by 1, 2 big guys at the rim. Even today where, they don't have as much congestion in the paint as they used to, but still, you go all the way to the rim, it's going to be a tough shot. So that's a tough one. And then you might have trouble getting all the way to the rim. The 3, at best, you hitting 40% of them. At best. And it's much less at that, at late game shots for 3s, less than 40%. But at best, you hitting 40% of them. And I don't mean you're going to hit them in those moments, but I'm saying just taking that shot in any situation, you're heroic if you hit 40% of those 3s. So the mid-range shot, the defense doesn't know what you're doing. You can get them off balance because you might go all the way, or you might stop on a dime, or you might cross over and switch directions. And then the shot's not as long, and you can hit it. The mid-range, master the mid-range. If you want to be a game-winning, you want to kill cats at the end of games when you need a bucket. And I just thought we saw that so much with MJ. And like I said, Kevin Durant, as great a shooter as he is from behind the arc, he's a mid-range assassin. And so is Kawhi. I know Kawhi hit a ton of game winners that we think of, but when they need a bucket, Kawhi's got his spots in the mid-range on the floor that he's getting to, and he's hitting those shots. And so don't give up. Don't throw away the mid-range. Just find the master, to the degree that you can, the 3. To work on the 3 and to shoot a lot of 3s. I get it. It's fine to go all the way to the cup and be a great finisher. But master that mid-range. And I'm not saying guys haven't hit 3s. Kyrie, obviously, you know, in the finals. You know, Ray Allen. I mean, Ray Allen's situation is more, you know, you almost got no choice, even though he stepped back. You know, you don't think much. But I'm talking about where you got time to make a move, make a couple moves. Don't give up on that mid-range. All right, and then this is something else too, and I've even said on television a few times that Jordan clearly pushed off on Brian Russell on that iconic game-winning, series-ending shot in Game 6. But when you really watch, and obviously I've seen replays, but really watching that, and it wasn't just because Jordan said he didn't push off. I thought this before Jordan even said that. You could see Jordan's hand was certainly on Russell's like backside, but it wasn't much of a shove. Russell was going that way. His momentum was carrying him. Jordan he had his hand there, but he kind of just, you know, as he was moving the other way, you know, it looked like he pushed. I'm sure he pushed him a little, but not nearly as much as I thought. And I've kind of always thought, you know, they should have called that. But when I look back at it tonight and see it, you know, slow motion several times, and the way his hand was kind of resting on his hip, and he moved away, making it look like more of a shove than it was, I think they made the right call. I think they made the right call in being a no call. And obviously it gave us one of the most iconic shots in NBA history. Another takeaway, at the end of their sixth championship, you saw Jordan in the locker room, and he said, they're talking about 6. He got 6 of these things, 6 rings. And he said, you can't win until we leave. I don't know if it was until we leave or until we quit or until we stop, whatever, but you can't win until we leave. That's one of the reasons, one of the many, that Jordan's the GOAT. Because once he started winning, it was a wrap for everybody in the world that played basketball. Like no one else would, he said it, no one else could win until he left. No one. I mean, the names, the Hall of Famers, the great players he kept from winning: Clyde Drexler, Charles Barkley, Gary Payton, Patrick Ewing, Hakeem Olajuwon, Karl Malone, Reggie Miller. No one could eat while Jordan was at the table. No one. And his run of dominance is unlike anything we've seen in sports since the old days. And my partner, Rob Parker, always says it. The reason that the Green Bay Packers in football, the New York Yankees in baseball, the Boston in the NBA used to win all the time is because back then, before free agency, once you had great players, they weren't going anywhere. They couldn't go anywhere. So if you got a great team, everybody stayed put. You had a bunch of Hall of Famers, everybody stayed put. And so you won year after year after year after year. And the other teams had trouble improving your opponents because there wasn't free agency. They couldn't just go out and get a guy who was a superstar from another team. So you take that era out, and we've seen nothing like this. Not in the NFL. I mean, Brady's got his 6. And I don't even hold the 3 losses, 6 of 9. He got to 9. That's tremendous. I don't hold that against him. But it was a 10-year gap between his 2-3 Super Bowl runs. You know? Magic won 5, went to 9, you know, but they won 2 in a row at the max. Shaq and Kobe won 3. in a row and then split up. Like Jordan's run of dominance, unprecedented. Unprecedented because he let no one else eat. No one else. No one else. And that's incredible. And so, some people may bring up Floyd Mayweather's undefeated, but Floyd, other guys ate. Manny Pacquiao was eating, and they didn't fight till they were both well up past their prime. Other guys were there, but Jordan let no one else win until he was done. Also, and I said this in the first episode, but it's worth repeating now. Another takeaway. It's just such a shame that this dynasty ended the way it did. And it was enlightening that Phil Jackson said that Jerry Reinsdorf gave him the opportunity to come back. And he obviously chose not to. He said it wouldn't be fair to Jerry Krause. Now, it wasn't a full opportunity because they were going to make him rebuild. And Jerry Reinsdorf talking about we would have built something in the next few years around Michael. No. It shouldn't have been a rebuild. It should have been a reload, if anything. And Michael, I think he probably was right. Now, Scottie, would they have paid Scottie? They should have paid Scottie. They should have paid Scottie. And it's a shame. I think dynasty should end one of two ways. Either you get beat on the court, or you guys are also old that you just retire as the champions. You disband yourselves. Not the players disband. One guy steps down. Michael Jordan decides, I'm stepping down. I'm done. I'm old. I'm done. Or Pippen or something like that. But not the front office. So it was a shame the way that dynasty ended. And that was really, I liked it, Jordan. I thought granted, he was asked the question, but the word maddening is right on the money. He says, I think we could have won 7. And I'm going to be honest with you. I think they would have beat San Antonio. I know San Antonio had the Twin Towers of Duncan and Robinson, but I believe that Michael Jordan and the Bulls, had they come back intact, could have beaten those San Antonio Spurs. And then, of course, the next year, that's when Kobe and Shaq took over. Man, I think Jordan still would have been great at that point. Now, they would have probably, Pippen, what would he have been like? His back was bothering him and stuff. But they would have had to bring in some new players by that point. You wonder, could Rodman still have been, how effective would he still have been? Could they even have taken, handled his shenanigans? But Jordan, when he came back at 40, a few years later, after Kobe and Shaq started doing their thing, he still was at 38, 39, and 40. He still was a legitimate all-star after 3, 4 years away, 5 years away, whatever it was. He still was a legitimate all-star. And so I think had he kept playing, new challenges, Kobe's coming, that Laker kid's coming, with Shaq's coming, so I think those challenges would have driven him. It's a shame we didn't get to see those Titans face up on the court. But those are my general takeaways. I guess overall I'll end it with this. And I don't know if we're gonna take questions tonight, but I'm open to them if my team wants to. But Jordan, I like I said, I loved it. I guess I said it at the beginning of the show. I'm glad he did it. I know he wanted to tell the story. He wanted to tell the story. He didn't want somebody else telling his story. He wanted to tell it. I think we all feel that way. We all want to tell our story. And so that's what he did. And that's why he wanted to do this. And I'm glad he did. I thought it was outstanding. And hopefully this starts, we're not going to take any questions, I'm told. But hopefully this starts a trend. I would love to see one of these done about the Shaq Kobe Lakers. I think it would be tremendous. Ironically, it'd have Phil Jackson in it again, but that would be great. I'd love to see one of these done on LeBron back in Cleveland and, you know, leading them to the championship in his second year there, like that whole 4 years even. The Warriors would be interesting, you know, with or without, I guess you could do without KD, with KD, but hopefully we'll see more of these. And even without certainly if you can get that footage, that unprecedented footage where you can just follow a team for an entire year, that'd be great. But even if you can't, it can still be done well, because what made The Last Dance so great was not necessarily the footage from the 97-98 season behind closed doors. That was great, but it was the way they told the story going back. It was really a story about Michael Jordan's entire NBA career. And you could do that with these other situations I mentioned. So hopefully that happens. But I'm signing off. I will be tomorrow. Got a long day talking about this. I'll be on First Things First with Nick Wright and Jenna Wolfe and Kevin Wilds at 8 a.m. Eastern. So get up early for that. Then I will interview Charles Oakley, obviously Michael Jordan's teammate in Chicago, opponent with the Knicks, and one of his good friends, one of his best friends he had in the NBA. So I'll interview Oak about The Last Dance and MJ. And then I'm going to interview David Aldridge. And all of this will be, you know, live for you guys to see. David Aldridge, the Hall of Fame journalist who was in The Last Dance and gave some great insight into it. We'll get with him tomorrow. So, and then Tuesday, we got another surprise, Sonny Vaccaro, who had a lot to do, even though you didn't see it, a lot to do with those Air Jordans everybody's sporting, including me. So we're going to have a good week talking about The Last Dance. And, of course, I'll be on the Odd Couple Monday through Thursday for me. I'll be off Friday, but Monday through Thursday with my partner, Rob Parker. And, of course, tomorrow will be Last Dance heavy. So make sure you tune into that on Fox Sports Radio, the iHeartRadio app, or Sirius XM Channel 83. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the recap. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.